ago, alhamdulillah, I had the honor of going to Medina. And for Medina, a very special place to go is the Rawda. I wanted to visit the Rawda of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I was only in Medina for 15 hours. For any of you who have gone to Medina, you know getting into the Rawda, for women in particular, is exceptionally difficult. Even if you're there for a week. I was only there for 15 hours. So I went from one gate to the next, asking, please, can I get into the Rawda? I'm not trying to cut in front of anyone, there's thousands of people. But would you tell me what is the time that I can come to get into the Rawda? I sat and I made dua and I begged Allah to open the doors of the Rawda for me. And there was no way I could get in because the women's slot was closing. And they told me, come tomorrow at this time and inshallah you will get in. I came tomorrow before that time. And do you know what I saw? Before the time they told me, I saw them admit the last woman and they closed the gate in my face. I left the Rawda, unable to look at the sky of Medina. I couldn't look at the earth of Medina. I could not look at the masjid of Medina. I felt like I did something so great that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala maybe is displeased with me. How can I be in Medina and not be able to go into the Rawda? And as I'm walking away from the Rawda, walking back to the hotel, all of a sudden, the ayah that came to my mind was about the three companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They are mentioned in Surah At-Tawbah. And they are described to have felt حَتَّى ضَاقَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ الْأَرْضُ بِمَا رَحُبَتْ وَضَاقَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ أَنفُسُهُمْ وَظَنُّوا أَن لَّا مَلْجَأَ مِنَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا إِلَيْهِ. They felt like the whole entire earth is just constricting them. Themselves are being constricted. There's nowhere to go from Allah except to Allah. This is in Surah At-Tawbah. I memorized Surah At-Tawbah years before. And I'm going to tell you very openly that when I was memorizing it, the very first day, I met with my teacher. She was so excited. At the time, I was studying in Egypt. And she said, oh, Surah At-Tawbah, I love Surah At-Tawbah. I was nervous. Surah At-Tawbah is very heavy. And that emotion never changed for me with Surah At-Tawbah. I memorized Surah At-Tawbah and it was the hardest surah for me to memorize. I would review Surah At-Tawbah and it was so hard for me to remember the verses. And while, of course, we all believe and love all parts of the Quran, I didn't have an emotional connection with Surah At-Tawbah. I had no deep connection with Surah At-Tawbah. And I would make dua for my heart to feel love, the emotional connection to Surah At-Tawbah. When this happened and the first and only verse that came to my mind was in Surah At-Tawbah, all of a sudden the emotional connection that I could not have felt for years opened. Now when I am in pain, I go to Surah At-Tawbah. The entire plane ride back was just listening for almost 15 hours on play Surah At-Tawbah. Surah At-Tawbah for me has become a surah of refuge. And that door would not have opened for me in that way had it not been such a devastating closure for me in this way. Alhamdulillah, I was blessed with going to Medina this past December. Again, I was there for a very short time. Now, they didn't have this that last time, but this time they have a new system. You have to apply through an app. And you can only go one time in a whole year. And you only can apply for the spot that's available when it opens up. No spots were available at all. I went from one person to the next, asking, how can I get in? They told me, go to the app line. Hours and hours of asking. I spent hours asking, trying to get in. Hours. And I remembered that there was a sister who had told me, literally the month before, she had gone to Medina and she had made dua in the Rawda for me to get into the Rawda. So I am looking at Masjid al-Nabawi and I'm like, Ya Allah, she made dua for me in the Rawda to get into the Rawda. I have to get into the Rawda. There's no way about it. She made dua for me in the Rawda. Then I get to the line, I wait, get to the end, I explain my situation. I'm here for a short time. There's no spots on the app. Can I get in? And the lady says, sorry. I say, Ya Allah. I turn away from the Rawda. I leave the Rawda. And I wake up the next morning and Sheikh Akram Nadawi is speaking. Hafidhahullah, a scholar of hadith. He's done so much work on women Quran scholars. And he was speaking in the hotel next to me after Salatul Fajr and I wanted to attend. So I go to the hotel next to me and it's a huge hotel. I don't know where he's speaking, I just know it's in the hotel. So I see a group of people speaking in English and I approach them. And I say, excuse me, are you here with Al-Buruj for Sheikh Akram's speech? And they say, no, we're with another group. I say, okay, Jazakallah khair. I walk away and a sister from the group sees me and she's like, oh, are you Miriam? I have Qari'ah. So she's talking to me about Qari'ah for a little bit, which I'm so grateful for. Which, by the way, if you weren't here yesterday, Qari'ah is the Quran Reciters app for women. Please download it, it's free. Qariah, Qari'ah. So this is just telling me, alhamdulillah, she uses Qari'ah. I'm so grateful. So because we're standing here for a second, there's a whole bunch of women and a group guide. There's a brother who's a guide. So he comes up to me and the sister because we're a little bit away from the group. So he comes up to us and he says, he looks at me. He says, sister, are you coming with us to the Rawda? I said, no, I'm not part of this group. He said, Yalla, come with us to the Rawda. I said, I'm not part of your group. I don't have a permit. He's like, Yalla, Bismillah, come to the Rawda. And Allahu Akbar, I went to the Rawda. I cannot explain to you the thought process for me the first time. I blamed myself so much. What am I doing in my life that's displeasing to Allah? But you know what I didn't think about? Policy. Because the majority of men get into the Rawda. And that's because the Rawda is open 24/7 for men. Women have very short times, and thousands upon thousands upon thousands of us are trying to get in. I saw thousands of women in line. I saw hundreds turn away because they are not rich enough to have a smartphone. They don't have data that's available at all times because you can't show a screenshot. It has to be a live app. They don't speak English or Arabic, which are the only two languages that they could choose. There are lots of ways in which access is not available to get into the Rawda for sisters. And yes, I definitely have things to work on. But also, sometimes, as women, we blame ourselves before we look at what externally can I do to, yes, improve myself, inshallah, but also change the reality for other sisters not to have to go through what I'm going through and blame themselves and then see it as a projection onto who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Being people who remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are people who remember Allah, yes, when we are tested on a personal level, but also when we are tested because we are women. And as we end, I want to share with you a narration of Jubair ibn Mut'im radiallahu anhu. Because when we're talking about being people who remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being people who remember the Quran, being people who, when we look around the world, we see through the lens of Quran. Sometimes we are very hard on ourselves because we should be hard on ourselves in the sense of we want to improve, okay? But not to the point that we hate ourselves because we wish we used to be better. Like, we wish we used to be the person before we had children. We wish we used to be the person when we could spend hours in the night worshiping. We wish we could be the person when we were 15 or 20 or 30. We think back to when we had time and health and energy and I wish I could be. Or we look at other people and we think, I wish I could be like that. I want to get to that place, but I'm not there. When will I ever get there? How will I ever get there? And this companion is a companion of the Prophet ﷺ. He had already converted to Islam. He was praying Maghrib with the Prophet ﷺ. And when he is praying Maghrib with the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ recited, أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ. Were they created from nothing? Were they And the next verse talks about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the heavens and the earth, like so much greater than this, and yet they're still not going to believe. He said, it was the first time I truly felt faith hit my heart, and it felt like I was going to fly, like my heart was going to fly. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, when he was the Khalifa, a group came from Yemen, and they came and heard the Quran, and they began to weep. And do you know what he said? He said, هَكَذَا كُنَّا. We used to be like this. And what does that tell you? Companions of the Prophet ﷺ, Umar radiallahu anhu, he would recite Surah Maryam, where it says that they would make sajda and they would weep. They would weep and they would make sajda. He'd make sajda and he would say, where are the tears? This is the sajda, where are the tears? Sophia radiallahu anha. Also, a group of people were reciting the same ayahs. They made sajda without the tears. And she said, where are the tears? These are companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there were times that they wept so uncontrollably because they were so scared of going to hell, even though they were promised paradise, some of them. And they were companions who would weep because of the beauty of the Quran. And they were companions who would weep because they missed the revelation. And they were companions who felt like they were not good enough at times with the Quran because they were not weeping. If that was the companions, then what about me and you? There are angels that roam the earth looking for you reciting the Quran at any level of recitation or understanding or trying to come closer to the Quran. And if there are times that you don't feel the emotional connection with a surah, like I struggle with Surah At-Tawbah, or there are times that maybe as a woman you struggle, I want you to know that there were women and men of centuries past who have gone through that journey, who have already left to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there may be right now a tree that they planted, that they are getting the reward for every time a bird eats from that tree, or every time a little squirrel seeks shade under it, that they forgot they even planted, and yet the reward continues to go. There is something you might have done or do. Maybe you taught your child how to say Alhamdulillah. And when they teach, inshallah, their child, and their child, and their child, and your great-grandchildren, inshallah, all that reward goes back to you, inshallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so much more generous and kind than we are to ourselves. So remember to be of the people, how to be of the people who remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's by living the Quran and viewing the way that we can, inshallah, change the world through the words of the revelations.